Hey guys, now that my Philco 38.7 chairside radio chassis is more or less working, I'm going to tear it apart. Here's my battle plan. First off, I want to remove the whole tuning mechanism. For a few reasons. I want to replace the rubber mounts down here, which are rock hard. I do have some replicas on hand. And I also want to see if I can fix the kill switch in here. Right now it's not working at all. I just happen to have a couple other mechanisms from parts chassis, so I can experiment on them. I believe there are two switches. One is inside here, and another engages a little pin around inside here. One or the other, or both, are not making contact right now. They should be shorting out this pin to ground at various positions as I push this and pull it out. If I can't get it to work, I'll just disable it. Not the end of the world. It's a cute gimmick. It'd be nice if it would work, but I'm not gonna risk damaging the mechanism just to make it work. And I'll also clean this up while I've got it out. You can see with these loose mounts as I'm rotating this, the whole thing's kind of wobbling around. Because this is a bit loose. Alright, so with that out of the way, I'm then going to tackle the tubes. Remember, I want to replace the three damaged tube bases. What I'm going to try using are some eyelets. Got these at Joann Fabrics. Well, a little tool for setting them. Did some experimenting already, and it turns out that these are just slightly too big to fit through these holes. So if I take a drill bit that's just a hair larger than these holes, it should fit through. My only concern really is that they're not quite as robust as the originals. And also they're not brass, but Now, I only need to have one of these be hollow out of the 6 I need to do. So 2 here, 2 on this guy, and this guy. These can all be solid. And for that, what I may use are these. These are number 4s. I think number 6s might be a little more appropriate. These are a little on the small side. These are, what do they call them? Button cap screws. So it's a tiny Allen wrench down the center. Then you put a washer and a nut on the other side. And I've heard that some guys will go so far as to even fill in that little Allen wrench with some JB weld to make it look like a rivet. So it would end up looking something like that. So that's another possibility. Or, of course, you can just use any plain old machine screw that will fit through that hole and tighten it down. One way or the other, I will get them mounted. I'll also clean up the chassis, which appears to be corrosion-free, which is fantastic. Just a little cleaning. And then I will clean up these caps, mount them in, possibly restuff them, or I might just mount them for cosmetics and leave the new caps underneath. Either way, the caps that are underneath right now, I need to do something. Either secure them better underneath or replace them entirely, because right now they're just kind of floating in space, so it's not good. And I think the last major issue is the volume control. The original one was missing from this. It had been replaced with something that was short and stubby, so I replaced it with one scavenged from another radio, but it seems to have a dead spot, and it's not at all linear. So I will try using this, which is my last one on hand, I believe. 2 meg with a 1 meg tap. So, try popping that guy in. And then I need to do something about this tube. It should be a 6K5G. I've got a 6K5GT in there. 6K5Gs, well, I'll talk about that in a moment. And then finally do an alignment, and hopefully that should be it. Now, as for my missing 6K5G situation, it turns out they are more scarce than I realized, and it's quite possible I just don't have any on hand. I think they're scarce because maybe they were not that widely used to begin with and there just weren't that many made, or maybe the audiophiles have been buying them up. They do seem to like the early triode tubes. Well, I looked around and there's one on eBay, and some of the tube vendors sell them as well. Average price $15. So I could cop up $15 and get one. Also, the Arky Radio Fest is coming up in a few weeks, and maybe I can find some there. Otherwise, somebody on the Antique Radio Forum suggested, hey, maybe you can use a 6Q7, which is a triode with very similar characteristics plus 2 diodes. Otherwise, the pinout is identical. The 2 diodes are on these 2 pins, 4 and 5, I believe, which are unused in the 6K5. So if in my radio those pins are not connected to anything, I should be able to drop a 6Q7G in there. Those are more common. I think I've got some of those on hand. One way or the other, I will find something that will fit. I've been spending some time digging through my tubes, and what do you know? I found a 6K5G. It's used. Tested good in 1939 at Bill's Radio Shop. So I think it's time to fire up my Hickok tester and see if it is still good. And I've also dug up some other ones I made, H6J5s and so on. So I think I'm pretty well set, assuming that this and the others test good. I've got my Hickok 600A fired up, and I was surprised to see there's no 6K5 listed in the roll chart. Luckily, it is listed on this insert of more obsolete tube types. Still, I would have thought that it would be in there, seeing as how it has a 6K7 and I think all the other tubes from this radio, but not the 6K5, so I guess they figured it just was never that popular, so let's just take it off. Alright, but here it is. It's JR03070. So, JR03070. I got that right. 03070. 03070. Alright. And 1562. So 1562. And moves in here. And grid. Okay. Filaments are lit up. It's a good thing. I should have done a line test, I suppose. Not off by much. Just a little more. Well, that's a little disappointing. That should be in the green. Now, if this was just a detector, it might be okay, but this is the first audio amp, so having gain that low is not such a good thing. So, I'll try it for sure. It wouldn't be the first time a weak tube worked okay in a radio. But I suppose I should keep my eyes out for a fresher replacement. As I said, I got Radio Fest in about 2.5 weeks, so I think I'll hold off on buying any until I check that out and hopefully pick up 1 or 2 there. Well, perhaps I spoke too soon. So, weak P4 reading? Well, how about I wiggle the grid cap a little bit? Hey, look at that. Still not fantastic, but a heck of a lot better, and just on the edge of good. So now I have far more confidence that this will work fairly well in the radio. So I guess that grid cap is just fairly corroded, or maybe my clip lead. Either way, a little bit of wiggling did the trick. Alright, got the whole tuning mechanism out of the way, and I've started drilling out the base shields. Found that it's best to use a larger drill bit. I'm using a 7/64 and to go really low RPM. And this is just brass. If you go high speed or use a smaller bit, it's just going to start spinning this around instead of cutting into it. So let's see if I can illustrate that here. Just like that. Alright. Now I don't care about saving these, so it's no big deal if it dings into it a little bit. And then I get it down to the point where there's a little bit of brass left, and then I take a hammer and a small flat-bladed screwdriver that I've sharpened, almost like a chisel, put it on the side and just knock off the remaining brass. Yep. Just pops off this little ring that was left. And knock it down through the chassis and the socket below. So I've got this one done. You can see the top socket is now flopping around loose. And I decided that at least for these that don't have that wire coming up to the grid cap, I'm going to go with the cap screws. So, and I'm going to use some nylon locking nuts on the other side. So that down like so, and then fish this through from the other side. Now that's a tricky bit because, of course, this is packed with wiring and parts, so a little hard to get down in there and get the nut on there. I may have to unsolder some of these wires to get them out of the way. This will be the most difficult one because it's in that corner packed with parts. This one I just drilled out. Probably be the easiest because it's fairly well exposed. There's that guy. So now that I realize it's got to go through the base shield and the chassis and the socket material, those little rivets I was playing around with, they're not long enough. They're not going to reach through. So still got to think about that one. Alright, so I'll see about trying to fish that through. But before I start remounting this stuff, I want to get this last base shield off and then clean up the chassis a little bit. These were originally chrome plated, but this cheap metal they use, cheap plating, like it would have looked like it does on the inside, on the outside. And that's just the way it goes with these shields over time. They just end up looking like this. This one's it's a little bit corroded, but it's actually a number. Somebody wrote 75 on there ages ago in red. I guess there's a little rust down there, so I guess I could toss these in some evapor rust for a few minutes and up in a corrosion. I get to drill gouge into that one a little bit. So hopefully I've got enough good ones on hand. This one's in really good shape, probably the best of the lot. Yeah, I think I can just go with these two. Like so, and like so. And eventually, when I get that out, like so. One down, two to go. That was indeed the easiest one to get at, so I did it first. To clean the chassis, I've just been using some spray 9 and paper towels, and it's turning out quite nice. Stuff also works great on aluminum. I think because it's so strong, it's actually a bit caustic, like oven cleaner, and that cleans the oxide off of aluminum quite well. So just a good wipe down with that will clean up all this stuff, except maybe for this area where there's some kind of goo on here. So I may use a little nail jelly or metal polish or something on that. I'm not trying to go nuts with this, just want to clean it up while I've got it all taken apart. And as for this tube base shield looking kind of cruddy because the plating worn off, well, who cares, because the shield's going to be going right over it. So, the shields are also a bit rusty, so I'll throw these in Evapor-Rust. And these, some of them, the plating's worn off in areas. If you take a buffing wheel and some buffing compound, even though the plating's gone, you can actually get these to look quite nice if you want to take the time and effort. The base metal, even though it looks really dull and brownish, will polish up pretty well. Okay, 1 installed, 2 installed, and half installed. Now here's where I finally have to deal with making a hollow connection there. I think what I will try doing is the pop rivet drilling out the center technique, but I haven't tried that before, so I think an experiment is called for. So I'm going to take that rusty Admiral TV chassis I showed in a previous video and pop some rivets onto that and see if I can drill out the centers. Alright, let's see, what would be a good size to use? System to smallest size I've got. So the same size. This needs to be the next larger. Won't quite fit. This is a socket I scavenged from something else. I figured it would be representative of the whole size. I'll double check on the chassis, see if this larger one would fit. Nope. Alright, this is it then. This is the size to use. I think I've got the right. I'm going to swap out the tool. Okay, get in there. Okay. Okay. Been a while since I used this. Thought this would go in all the way. I'm sure it's supposed to. Don't want to. There we go. Oh, still had a pin from the last time I used it. That's why it wasn't going in. So my concern was, would this be long enough to go through the chassis material, the tube, the shield, and the socket? So, which one do I want to use? This might be a little tough to get the socket. Let's try holding it in free space. The shield's already been drilled out a little bit, so I don't even know if this is going to hold on right. Yeah, that's going to be a a bit of an issue there. Gonna have to come in at a bit of an angle because of the sidewalls. I'm not even sure this is gonna work. Yeah, no. I cracked the socket too. Hadn't counted on that. Try that again. Yeah. Well, that sucks. Yeah, just for the hell of it, I'll just try doing one straight up to see if I could even drill it out anyways, assuming I could even get one installed properly. Well, this isn't working because, oh, there it goes. Yeah, this hole's too big. Alright, let's try it. I'm gonna get rivets here. Got to be a little more conservative. That hole's too big for this size rivet. That's the problem. Too small. There we go. Let's try it again. They're cheap. I can always run out and buy more if I need to. Also, when I was at the hardware store earlier tonight, I noticed they had an eyelet assortment, and they did have some that were brass, and it was like just $2, and it came with a tool. I wouldn't be able to use it for this, but for other things where it was kind of like a hole puncher, where you could put it on either side of something, squeeze it, and lock them down. And it came with a whole mess of eyelets. So for $2, it might be worth experimenting with that too. Alright, so back to this. Oof. Yeah, with that smaller hole now, I have to come straight in because there's just no wiggle room, so I cannot do it. There's no way with the shield in place for me to get this tool down to pop the rivet in securely. Oh well, if it had worked, that's what it would look like. And oh yeah, that looks like it's very, very drillable. Because the pin actually broke off down inside there. So it's easy to get a drill down in there. So let's give that a try. Because even if I can't do it here now on this project, it's good to know for future reference. If I had a different riveting tool, or I had more clearance such that I could tool in there. It's probably too big. Get too big, I'll end up drilling the rivet right out. If I figure too small, I wouldn't be able to fit a wire through the center. Well, that didn't work so well. It got stuck in there. Wow, that really all the way through? That seemed too easy. Yeah. Alright, well. So, that certainly could be used in the future. So, it's going to be too fat, I think. Yeah. Well, let's see. Well, pretend this was insulated wire. Right down through it. So it definitely would work if I could just get my pop riveting tool in place. So, for the sake of holding up this project, I think I'm going to spend the time to research alternate pop riveting tools that may have a longer shank or whatever that I could get around there. So there's the eyelet option, but those are so shallow I don't think they have enough to get through all the material and have enough strength to bend over on the other side, so that's not going to work. Is there another way to do a pop rivet without this tool? Possibly. If I could knock out this center pin and just leave the bottom piece, which you might be able to buy on its own too, but I didn't see any at the hardware store. And then I could just flange it over on the other side myself without the pop rivet tool. So let's see. This is a larger one. So can I knock that center pin out? Oh yes I can. Well, there we go. This might be the solution. So here I've got my hollow rivet. Now, if I can put it in the other chassis and figure out a way on the other side to use a tool, nail set, something, then I can just whack a few times and flange this over on the other side and be all set. And I can run my wire down through the center. Well, it turns out I was mistaken. I just had to line up the shield better with the socket, and the larger size rivet will fit, so I don't have to go with this little dinky one. That'll make my job a little bit easier, I think. More material to work with. So that dropped down right in there. So all I have to do is figure out how to secure it from the other side. Well, while I ponder that, let's take a look at something else. Got a comment on my previous video asking about this thing. What is this big ceramic block? Well, it's actually a variable capacitor, as is the one next to it. If you look on the other side, see there are a couple screw heads there, and those are for adjusting trimmers. I'll be doing that during the alignment. Well, this is the parts chassis, so I figured, what the heck? Let's pop that out, because I've never seen one before quite like that. So let's pop it out and take a closer look at it.
I've got an idea.
Get this one out easily enough.
This won't go with her. You know what time it is. Wait.
Kind of rusty.
Remember that assignment you wanted to send me to the coast to cover the awards, but you passed on it. Right. The Career Achievement Award at the Academy. Jordan, surely this can wait. That's just it. It can't. Come morning, I'll be on a plane.
Still on a pretty solid.
Oh, yeah. So fast.
Well, that didn't tell us much of anything, did it?
Pamela Morris isn't attending. As usual, so what?
Well, I guess if I really want to know what this is all about, I gotta pry up those tabs, pop this open. First, let's see if this even turns.
So here's what you do. Have you been drinking? Buddy, I'm stone cold sober.
Yeah, it does.
For the red eye out of O'Hare. As soon as it's morning, Pacific time, call our agent.
It's not like the screw comes in or out or anything now, so I don't really know what it's doing. It just seems to turn forever.
It's Pamela Morris.
So it's probably just rotating something on the other side.
Still as beautiful as they say.
So I'm guessing what's inside there is probably something like show you one of these
I haven't been to bed.
where it continually rotates.
All night long.
It's a smaller version, it's completely enclosed.
No matter what. Thanks, Kruger. It'll be worth it. This, I
Or something
promise you.
like this, same deal. It just keeps turning and turning. So,
Jordan Herrick, syndicated columnist, whose work appears in more than 100 newspapers. By nature a cynic, a disbeliever, and a jaded commentator on the movie business. Caught up for the moment in a lovely vision. He's not sure whether that vision is merely a dream, but he'll soon find out. Her name is Pamela Morris, renowned star and femme
it's
fatale,
tough to bend up.
not seen in public for many years, whose legendary beauty is remembered by millions. Mr. Herrick is correct about one thing. Tomorrow he will make her acquaintance in person. But what he does not know is that the face he gazes upon may actually be a reflection, beamed his way directly from the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone continues in just a moment. You know Bellawood flooring for its beauty and durability. And now at Lumber Liquidators, Bellawood flooring is on sale. Get 10% off every Bellawood pre-finished floor, including solid hardwood, ultra-strand bamboo, and Bellawood matte with a unique oil finish look. Save big and pre-finished hardwood at just $169 a square foot and Black Forest laminate for only $49. So go to lumberliquidators.com
Interesting.
to find the store nearest you. Over 70.
So, one end we got one of the capacitor leads to a little metal box. On the other end is another metal box with a brass insert, threaded no doubt with a spring on the end. So as I turn this, I suspect this box is going to move up and down, back and forth. Yep. See, it's coming off the end. Imagine if you go too far, probably with this together, you hit a stop when this bottoms out on the interior. And go back the other way. Have never seen a variable capacitor like this. It seems overly complicated, over-engineered. You'd think the one like the one I just showed would be more practical or easier to manufacture. Now the one next to it's also a variable capacitor, but that I can see from the side, it looks like it's just a stack of mica sheets and metal, and that probably just varies the pressure on it as you tighten and loosen the screws. I'll just pop this back together in case I ever need it again. Let's see. It's like this. Well, it might not be the most elegant solution, but I think I've got my rivet situation solved. So what I did is I took that pop rivet with the center post removed, held it tight on the other side, and took a Phillips screwdriver and jammed it in the end and twisted it around to flare out the end. And that didn't seem like it would really hold well enough, so I took some JB Weld. It's like a two-part epoxy. And with a toothpick carefully applied it around the perimeter and worked it in good. So I think that'll do the job. And I think I'll use this type of wire for the grid cap. It's the it's cloth-covered, vintagey looking stuff. It's the pushback kind. It'd be nicer if it was stranded, but all the stranded stuff I've got, it's just too thick to fit through that hole well. And I don't think this will see a whole lot of flexing, so I think a solid conductor is alright. And this will fit through the hole. I can get it lined up. There we go. So, and then on the other side, I'll reattach the cap, and then it'll go on the top of the tube and just just like so. That takes care of that. Also replaced the volume control. This is an original Philco, and the schematic calls for a 2 meg pot. This measures more like 1.5, but I think it'll be alright. So curious, this came from that other donor chassis, and on that one, this ground strap had never been soldered to anything, nor has this outer terminal. I was wondering, well, how could this work? Because you definitely need to ground that terminal. Well, it turns out that this terminal is actually attached to the body of the potentiometer. So once you mount it on the chassis, this actually is grounded. So they must have known that that's how these controls were going to be used typically. So they just went ahead and did a production run with that terminal tied to ground. Got to be careful though, if you were ever to, say, part out a chassis and use this in something else, and that was not supposed to be grounded, that could definitely cause a problem. Alright, so next task, I'm going to start rebuilding the capacitors. So for the 4 and the 8, I'm going to use these two guys. 105 degree rated, high quality, long life caps. I'll use a 10 and a 4.7 in place of the 8 and 4. I had used the Sprig Atom before, and I thought about reusing it, but got a date cut in 96, so it's a little old, and it's only rated for 85C. Not that the radio is going to get that hot, but capacitor life is a function of temperature, and 105C caps last a lot longer than 85C caps. And for the final one, I'll use this. It's a Panasonic 105C long life cap. I've been doing a bit more reading up on the Concentric tuning action, and I've been playing around with the spare one I salvaged out of I think a Philco 38.4 console. And this one seems to work. And this has the same call letters on it for the Chicago area, so it's not inconceivable that I could swap out the one that came with my chair side and use this one instead if I really care about that action working. This one's pretty grungy though. I did clean up a section of it. There's a brass track around in here, and I cleaned off a section. So I think I can demonstrate how this works. So I put my meter in mode where it makes a tone for continuity. So whenever you hear that tone, that means the radio would be silent. So right now, knob is out all the way. You can tune around. You would not hear anything out of the speaker. So it's a little bit dirty. Now, there's what they call the intermediate position. So if you push this in a bit, now you would hear the radio. And now you could push this down and tune your stations in, or just use the outer knob and do it coarsely. Now the next position is if you do want to listen to one of these cone presets. Continue pushing it in, and it should beep again while you're fishing around and trying to get the cone locked in, and then when you're all the way down, you'd hear the radio again. Now suppose you're tuning around and you miss your cone. So remember, beep means radio would be silent. Intermediate, the radio would come back on, and then I missed my cone. It mutes the radio again. So it's a matter of how much do I care if this goofy mechanism really works the way it was originally meant, because as you can hear it, it's flaky. So I imagine if I was used as right now being dirty, whenever you hear that go out, remember you'd suddenly hear static or radio stations coming in. So I don't know. Philco Repair Bench website, they have details on the original service info for this, including exploded diagrams of what's going on in here, and it's fairly complicated. So there is a switch mechanism in here, and I believe these adjustments are to adjust the tension. So that's the switch for the intermediate position. And then this little switch down here is really the fiddly one. So there's a little lever here, and there's a contact that runs around this brass portion in here where I've cleaned it a bit. That's real finicky, because at first I thought, oh, when the plunger hits this little lever sticking out, it disengages that switch. Simple, but no. It has different behavior if you're not near a cone and you push it down, or you're right on a cone and push it down. That's why this lever is shaped to kind of match the contour of one of the cones. So if you're at a cone and you push this down, it disconnects that switch and lets the music come through, or the sound come through. If you are not on a cone and you push it all the way down, it does not disengage that. That's still making contact. Now the one that's in my radio, the one that came with this chair side, none of this seems to work, and I don't know why. Now, as far as swapping them out goes, there's a flexible coupler on the back. So this mates up with the shaft on the variable tuning cap that mounts on the chassis here. So a couple issues. One, I don't know that this, since this came from a console and a slightly different chassis, I don't know that this would mount on here. Probably does. It mounts right in the front of the chassis. You can see how it's discolored there where it used to be mounted. This does seem to have the same profile. And assuming it's the same height and everything, I suppose I could. As far as the condition, it's filthy. It looks to be scratch free though. And down in here, I sprayed a little contact cleaner down in there, and I cleaned it all up real nice. But this is all still really gunked up. So if I just spray this whole thing, it may come out nice and shiny clean. Now the reason it's tricky is they connect together via this, which is like some thick rubber, slightly flexible pads, and there are a couple screws that you would tighten down to connect them together. Now the ends of those is an odd tool. I don't have that tool. I'm not even sure how I got this off the other one. I probably used something like long nose pliers, I'm not sure. But I don't recall it being very easy to do. That's why I'm a little leery of taking it apart. But I'll give it a try, because I kind of want to take the other one apart regardless of, even if I put it back in the radio, just to clean it out. I want to clean all the bearings and the gears and all that, because that one's a little bit gummed up too. That, what you just heard, was the center thing that fell out. You would take that out to adjust these cones. I thought that you would maybe pull the chassis out of the radio and do the cones from the side, but no. They had a special tool. This whole thing is hollow right down the center. There was a special tool you would run down the center, and then it would lock into these two little holes on the ends of the cones, and then you could loosen them up and adjust it with that. So let's see, there's a screwdriver small enough, that won't fit in. Let's use a hook of something. Just want to see if that really is hollow all the way through. This will do. It's a piece of solder. This will do, just a piece of thick solder. So yeah, that is hollow all the way through. So with the right tool you could go down, loosen up that cone, and then move it around and tighten it back down. That's how they set up the presets. You're supposed to bring this to your factory authorized dealer, and they would have that special tool and know how to adjust these. Actually, what I just said isn't quite true. This is what you heard fall out. I thought that this was solid on the end and you had to take this off to get at those cones, but no, it's hollow too, so you can leave that in and adjust the cones, which makes me wonder why on 2 of mine is it so chewed up, because I don't see why there's any reason why you would ever need to take that out, except maybe to replace these knobs. Who knows?